Dow Jones falls 254 points on auto and financial woes. Stocks tumbled around the world again today, in part because of the news that General Motors and Chrysler may not make it after all, but also in response to reports that Bank of America and JPMorgan Chase have indicated conditions had worsened for them also. Stocks suffered their biggest losses since early March today in the wake of the Obama administration's demands that General Motors and Chrysler Group redo their business plans or face possible bankruptcy. The Dow Jones Industrials were down 254 points, or 3.3%, to 7,522. The Standard & Poor's 500 index was off 28 points, or 3.5%, to 788, and the Nasdaq Composite Index fell 43 points, or 2.8%, to 1,502. The Dow and S&P had their worst point losses since March 5th. The Nasdaq's decline was its worst since February 10th. And when they stand up, they're always falling back down or falling backwards, never able to progress or go forward. General Motors down 25.4% to $2.70 was the biggest percentage loser among the 30 Dow stocks as concern mounts that the auto giant and Chrysler might be forced into bankruptcy. The Wall Street Journal has said that the Obama administration favors splitting General Motors into two companies, one that had the two most valuable operations, Chevrolet and Cadillac. Theoretically, the rest of General Motors would go into a so-called bad company whose assets would then be sold off. Concern over what the automobile industry might ultimately look like was just one factor that weighed on stocks. There were others. Weakness in financial stocks after the Treasury Secretary said that some banks may require even more financial aid from the government, even more taxpayer money, or even more bailouts. Bank of America was off 17.9% to $6.03. Citigroup fell 11.8% to $2.31. Falling energy stocks after crude oil fell to $48.41 a barrel in New York, a decline of 7.6% and the lowest close for crude oil since March 16th. More worries about how long the recession will last after a manufacturer of construction cranes withdrew its full-year profit guidance because of falling sales. Caterpillar also fell, while General Motors was the biggest percentage loser among the Dow stocks. 88 points of the blue chip index's loss came from 5 stocks: Boeing, JPMorgan Chase, United Technologies, Chevron, and Caterpillar. Only 2 Dow stocks finished higher: IBM and Johnson & Johnson. If the Dow maintains its gain for the month, which nobody knows for sure, well, there is a downward spiral going on here, or spiraling outward. Because if General Motors and Chrysler, or General Motors, or just one of them goes out of business or goes bankrupt, well, that'll affect a lot of auto suppliers also, and many other jobs that are connected. The task force spent a month analyzing the two automakers, concluding that both General Motors and Chrysler have unsustainable liabilities. Supposedly, their best chance at success may well require utilizing the bankruptcy code in a quick and surgical way, the White House has said. General Motors, for instance, is burning more cash than it earns. How can a business stay in business that way? So General Motors has failed a key test of viability. Bankruptcy for General Motors would wipe out all ordinary shareholders in the company and leave bondholders to receive pennies on the dollar in relation to the face value of bonds. Well, you can be sure they're not going to like that. The White House was hoping for a surgical bankruptcy for General Motors, whatever that might be exactly. Although many bankruptcy lawyers were saying quick was not going to happen. The uncertainty about General Motors and Chrysler was hitting related stocks. U.S. Steel was down 11.5% to $21.55. Alcoa fell 14.2% to $6.69. American Axle was down 22.2% to $1.37. And foreign automakers were also suffering from the American woes. Toyota was off 3.1% to 63.53 in New York. Honda was down 5.4% to 23.29, and Nissan fell 7.6% to $7.30. And once again, there's something more going on here. It is a worldwide economic crisis, a recession, whatever it's called. And there's something bigger in all this here. GM CEO steps down. He will step down from his position as Chairman and Chief Executive Officer of General Motors. If General Motors is to be allowed to survive, theoretically, it needs someone with a totally fresh mind, someone untainted by decades of failed management and strategy, said one expert. Another expert agreed. The bailout loans aren't hugely popular, and that's creating a real issue for Obama. Theoretically, one way to make the loans more palatable is to be able to say the person responsible is no longer with General Motors. General Motors has received so far $13.4 billion in loans from the federal government to help keep the company afloat. And the automaker said last month it needs another $16.6 billion or more in additional aid just to survive. No, they're not making any money. They're losing money. Defaults and delinquencies rise. Many Americans are now struggling to make their mortgage payments, according to the Federal Housing Administration. Approximately 7.5% of FHA loans were seriously delinquent in February, a 6.2% jump from the number in February 2008. Still, the number of foreclosures that began in February rose to 243,000 from 217,000 in January. Approximately 87,000 homes were repossessed by banks last month, a 28% surge from January's completed foreclosures. Since July 2007, 1,395,044 homes have been lost and still climbing rapidly. And once again, these are more signs of the end times, transition days. The transition is happening rapidly.